I really don't like narration, but, I mean, I say that with a big but. I mean, I love it when films just let you into a world. And every time you hear, as you did there, suddenly, whatever that guy said, you're suddenly just jolted out of that world. So I try to make films without it. But I also think, it's slightly purist and immature to think that narration commentary doesn't have a role, and there are extremely good films that have it, and certain films, you can't make films without them. I mean, The Falling Man has been my most successful film. To me, it's covered in narration. Now, that was partly because the commissioning editor and I had just had total disagreements over it. He kept coming into the cutting room and saying, "Henry, this is a sync assembly." And I kept saying, "No, it isn't. This is people telling a story in their own words. You've got to have narration." I mean, we just didn't, between these four walls, we just had such different perspectives on filmmaking. And yet, the film was hugely successful. So, that to me was a lesson that, commentary, I mean, I knew this already, but that's a very good example that commentary has a place. My last film, again, like The Falling Man, a kind of recent history, contemporary history film, I tried to make it without commentary, but there were so many ideas I wanted to tease out, and the story was so complex that you just had to have a bit of commentary at certain places to make it work. And I think if you want to make films without commentary, you need to make, A, I think observational films are easier to do it with, and B, you sort of almost have to simplify stories to do it. I mean, I'm not going to show the clip. The next film I was about to show has no commentary at all, and that's a film about sort of internet chat rooms and sexuality, and that's really more of a kind of just four people telling their stories. It's a much simpler, conceptually simpler film. But I don't particularly love it, but I think it definitely has its place, and I always worry when people say, "I hate commentary," or, because I think commentary, you can list tons of films that are just extraordinary films that have commentary. My ideal, though, is always to try to make a film without it and then just put it where it's necessary. This film was a little harder because the commissioning editor really is somebody who really loves commentary. So what I was doing was that, and he sort of got his crowbar in there earlier than I would have chosen and said, I really think, you need to have commentary there, and to me, it's a more organic process. But because I prefer to have people's voices tell as much of the story as possible, it's exactly that. It's just building, and I know we've got to, so if you look at the Kenya film, you'll see most of the commentary is just factual. The flower industry, or, and it doesn't, this commentary is a slightly more, what's the word? It's slightly more leading. And I think this film spoon feeds you more than I generally would. And that's because the commissioning editor and I just didn't see eye to eye on commentary and the role of commentary and the role of voices in the film. And that happens occasionally. I don't really like films where the director kind of makes him or herself a kind of character, for the most part, because I think a lot of it is actually, I've seen enough films where it feels forced. And I don't know, it's one thing if Joan Didion is telling you about her feelings about things, but a lot of films, you hear the voiceover of the filmmaker saying, "I couldn't help but think that, James was angry at me," and I just think, well, I don't really care. I'm kind of old-fashioned. I like just making films, and it's about people. And I like to think I author films because clearly I get the material and I shape them and the rest of it. But I don't really like those voiceover-led films, which are kind of, maybe they were in vogue for a while, and maybe they still are. But this film, it just naturally evolved that our relationship became kind of central because he lied to me. He said, "I'm going to use your film as a thing." He says Henry throughout the film that you saw in that sequence. "Come on, Henry, can you help me? It's, can't you play it back? And so it just naturally evolved. But I never, for example, someone said, "Henry, you should take a shot of yourself in a mirror holding the camera." And why?